There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. I made you get up. Is that too loud now? Okay. Sorry, you can tell I'm awkward. I'm going to put my phone here. My wife said warned me 3 times not to go over tonight. We spoke this morning at a small church, and they said, "Oh, we don't really care how long you do during class." And an hour later, they were wishing they hadn't told me that. So, in Africa, when you speak, it's just whenever you decide to quit, you just quit, and then they don't really care. So, and being here, I'm trying to do better on my time. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to come and talk about the work that me and my wife have had the privilege to be a part of this past year. In September the 20th, so about a year ago, we boarded a plane. All we took with us was 3 suitcases apiece. And that's not 3 huge crates. Actually, it was 2 that were 50 pounds and 1 that was 35. And we moved to Africa. We'd never been there before. That was the first time. We stepped off the plane 26 hours later. That was the first time that we'd ever been to Arusha, Tanzania. You can see on the map, of the big map of Africa, where we are located is Tanzania, which is on the east coast there. And then, if you look at the smaller zoomed in of Tanzania, Arusha is right above where it says Tanzania, almost in Kenya. There's about 55 million people there. 70% of those are either Muslim or from a tribal religion. So there's about 30% Christians there. As you move towards the coast, it becomes more Muslims. I think the last statistics I've seen in Zanzibar is like 99% Muslim now, and that's right there on the coast. But of the 30% Christian, there's a lot of Catholics, a lot of Lutheran, and a lot of Pentecostals that are there. We went there to work with the Andrew Conley School of Preaching. The Andrew Conley School of Preaching is a Bear Valley school. I don't know if you're familiar with Bear Valley and their model. They set up schools all over the world, and they train preachers in their home country to go out and preach and evangelize in their local area. Instead of bringing them back to the States where they can be influenced by Westernization, they go there and set up these schools. This one actually offers a bachelor's and master's degree in Bible. So when they leave the school, they can have a master's degree accredited from Bear Valley in Colorado. An example of how this model works, if you see the picture where I'm sitting there in front of one of the church buildings, this church is actually about 2.5 hours away. We got the privilege to go visit them one day. You drive out about 2.5 hours, and you park up on this hill, and you have to walk through about 3 different fields. And you can't even see the church. We actually saw a guy on the side of the road and said, "Do you know where the Church of Christ is?" "Yeah, just head down this hill and you'll run into it." So we make our way through all these fields, and we found this church building just sitting out there. The man that started this church went through Andrew Conley towards the beginning of the school. And he went through, got his bachelor's, and then got his master's. Then went back to his home, back to his village, and started this church here. Since the start of this church, he's done a lot of evangelizing, built up the church, and he has sent 7 more students to the school. These 7 students went through, got their degree, and then went back and have started 7 more congregations in that area. So you can see how this model works. Since the start of the school, they've taught around 160 students. These 160 students have been responsible for over 400 church plants in East Africa. That's 400 new churches that weren't there since 2001. So you can see this school does a lot of good in Arusha, in Tanzania, in East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, all these places. This school is very vital to the spread of the gospel there in Africa. And since the beginning of this mission point, the goal has always been to have a self-governing, self-propagating system. The idea of training preachers is so that they can go out and preach others and create more Christians and send other people to be trained. So this is an ongoing process. The school was actually saw the dream of being self-governed this last year when the leadership was handed over to 2 local men. It took a lot of training, a lot of effort, but there's 2 guys now that are running this mission. And since a lot of these guys have been through and are now have their masters, there's a lot of them teaching the classes. Most of the classes are taught by the local men. There are some that come and do short courses from the States, but the majority of the classes being taught are by local men who have their master's degree. So that has always been the goal of this, is to have a school that can run on its own. Well, we were asked to come, and we dedicated our first year. Our first commitment was for a year, and we went with the idea to start a farming project to try to replace a lot of the school's food, to kind of cut the school bill off the budget. Within 6 months, we were pretty much able to do that. We cut back way on the food budget in about 6 months of being there. Then tragedy almost struck the mission point. Brother Cy Stafford, the guy who started this mission, has been in Africa for a long time. He's a great, great man of God. About 2 weeks after we arrived, got sick. He had to come back home, and they found out he had leukemia. He actually coded once, and then we get a phone call about a week or two later saying that, Brother Cy is going to pass away. He's not going to make it. He had a perforation in his colon. They were going to take him off life support, and he would be dead within the hour. So it was a pretty rough time there at the mission. A lot of the Africans were sending us emails and text messages of their last words they wanted to say to Cy before he passed away. Well, we go to bed that night, and I wake up the next morning expecting to hear the news, and we hadn't heard anything yet. And so I call. I said, what's going on? You said he'd be dead in an hour. What's going on? And they said, well, he's still alive. He's getting better. Within like 3 or 4 days, he was sitting up in bed. It's amazing the power of prayer and fasting that God still answers prayers. And Cy is a perfect example of that. The doctor said that, hey, there's no way that he's going to live. He's got an hour. He's going to be dead. And they tried to explain that, maybe these tests we ran 2 or 3 times were wrong. The machine didn't work. But it's obvious that God had a hand in this, that God was not through with Cy. But this brought to question some issues with the mission. There's been a lot of great mission points that's been set up all over the world. And then when the main missionary, the guy who started these things, if something happens and they have to go home, what happens to these mission points? Well, a lot of times they're forgot about and they kind of fall off the radar. We don't want this to happen in Arusha. So since we saw this, we came up with an idea that maybe we can take this farming project to the next level. Not only can this place be self-governing, self-propagating, but also it can be self-sufficient. So we decided for the next 3 years to commit to work at these farming projects, to expand them, which we've already started, to reach a point to where if Western money was to be pulled from this point, that this mission work can continue forever. Our goal is that this place will continue to be training preachers, the gospel will continue to be spread all over Africa, whether or not Western money is there or not. And because we think that this school was vital to the spread of the gospel there, and we want this to last for a long time. So I'm going to show you some of the things that we're doing, but first I get the question all the time, they know how to farm, they've been there forever. Why do you need help farming? The Africans are very sweet people, they're very smart, they're very, very hardworking. Just to survive there, you have to be a hard worker. You have to go walk miles to get water, you have to cook. Cooking takes all day, they wash their clothes at the creek. It's a hard life, it's a hard way of life. But the education system there is very, very, very lacking. And we'll talk about some stories and things we've done, the very simple things, not like these awe-inspiring, great mental things that we've come up with on our own. This is very simple, basic stuff that we've been able to educate on so that they can go from just surviving to where they can thrive and be prosperous. So these are some of the things we're doing on the farming project. First is chickens. When we arrived there, we had 100 egg layers. We had ordered them before we got there, so when we got there, they were just starting to lay eggs. When we arrived, there was 100 chickens in this little bitty small house. There were no boxes, no roost, and they were laying their eggs on the ground. They were eating them. They were cracking, and the nutrition was very, very bad. So we went down to Home Depot and bought some plywood, and we brought it back to build laying boxes. There's just no Home Depot, sorry. In case I didn't want you to think there is not one there. We went down to the local guy who had just boards laying around and bought some boards to build laying boxes with. And I'm a huge fan of home improvement. I don't know if anyone here enjoyed it. After school every day when I was in high school and middle school, I used to come home and love watching home improvement. Tim Allen always wanted his saws to be bigger and stronger and faster. And everything was always, he just liked big tools. Well, the power over there is 240. So I figured, hey, when I plug in my 110 saw, it's just going to run a lot faster and cut a lot better. Well, when you plug in a 110 into a 240 and pull the trigger, smoke comes out, it makes this loud popping sound, and it doesn't work. So I'm not sure if anyone had the privilege of ripping plywood with a handsaw, but it's just a lot of fun if you ever get the opportunity. You should try it. So what should have taken half a day took 3 days to build these laying boxes. So we get the laying boxes in, and then the next thing, if you see the eggs up there, if you ever get an egg in Tanzania and Arusha, the yolks are going to be white. They don't understand nutrition for the chickens. The eggs there are very terrible. They're nasty, to be honest with you. There's a big joke. We had some missionaries come in and they went and got eggs, and when they was like, "Where's my yolk?" They were asking the waiter, "Who took my yolk out of my egg?" Well, that's the way the eggs are. They're white. There is no yolk in them. So kind of show an example of the lack of education. We had a vet that come and stayed with us. She came, a local vet, came and saw our place, all our animals, And we sent her home with some eggs. And she called the next day and said, you know, these eggs were awesome. How did you get your chickens to lay eggs with yellow yolks? So this is a lady who's been to college, who's supposed to be the expert in animals, that doesn't understand about nutrition and chickens. So if she doesn't understand, how does the local person understand about this stuff? So it's just very simple stuff. So all we did was added boxes. We put up some roosts in the house, and we changed their diet around so they're getting proper nutrition. They went from getting about 20 eggs a day out of that 100 to when we left, we were getting 90 out of the same 100. Didn't change the chickens. And then right before we left, we had just started 500 more, and I talked to the guy that's over the farm about 3 weeks ago now. The 500 started laying. Since this project has been successful at a small scale, we moved it to a large scale. As you can see, the small red house, actually we only use half of that house for our egg layers. We've now built a house that'll hold 1,000 egg layers. The goal of this is to the school use what it needs, and then we sell the rest as income to provide money back towards the school. Because we have better eggs than everyone else, we can sell our eggs for a higher price, and they're in high demand. We don't have any trouble selling eggs. We never have any sitting around. Because ours is a lot better quality than the locals. And another problem with a lot of people who raise their chickens over there, they don't know about rotation. So their chickens will lay for about 2.5 to 3 years, and then they stop laying really good, so they sell them. Well, then it's another 6 months before they can have their next ones laying. So what we're teaching is a rotation so that our buyers can always have eggs. If we can do that, we can move in on some of these other people who don't understand how to rotate their chickens. So the idea of this project, the first 500, we put zip ties around their legs, something very simple that we can get there, and they can know that, hey, these 500 are the first ones to go, and we'll start 500 more. So that way we can keep rotating and sell the first to be able to buy the second. So the goal is to always have about 1,000 egg layers at a time to provide money for the school. Another project we're doing is broilers. When we got there, they had cut meat from the budget. It was too expensive, and they weren't able to provide meat for the meals. So we'd say, well, we can do this broiler project, and we'll raise enough broilers to provide meat for the school to kind of give them a little bit better diet, a little more nutrition, and then we'll raise enough that we can sell the rest in order to make this a zero income, make this a zero cost. So this equals out. We don't make any money on this project, but we're able to provide meat for the students, something they normally don't get, something to help their diets, improve their diets for a zero cost to the school. So we do about 600 every 4.5 to 5 weeks now. We've upped that. When we got there, they were only doing like 150, and now we're doing around 600 in the same area that we had. We didn't have to build any new houses for this. If you're thinking that's a lot of chickens to kill, it is. It's a big job. But luckily, there are some local people that from around there that we get to come in every 5.5 weeks or 4.5 weeks, and they clean all our chickens for free. All we have to do is give them the legs and the heads, and they do it all up for us for free. I'm not sure what they do with them, but I don't ask. But after cleaning 600 chickens, you'll do anything. They did not have to do it. It's a lot of work. You can see in the picture that's actually us doing it the first time I got there. After that first time, I said, we've got to find a better way to do this. The next thing we're doing is cattle. Just like with the chickens, we noticed some things with the cows that the very basic, simple things that we take for granted. How many of you didn't know that if you have dairy cows, they have to drink water in order to have milk? Yeah, they didn't know that. And you think about the way their thought process goes, they don't drink very much water. Water is something that's hard to come by. A lot of times the water runs once a week, and you have to carry all the water that you can use from that for a whole week from that location. And sometimes it's miles away from where you live. So they don't waste water. They use it very rarely. I know the guys we work with out in the field, they don't drink during their day. They come and sit down and have lunch. They don't drink any water. I get dehydrated just watching them. It's tough to see them all day, and then they never drink any water. And also the women over there, when they have kids, it's not a good thing at all. They won't drink water. They don't drink enough water to produce enough milk for their kids. They definitely don't drink cold water because that makes your milk cold, and then when the babies drink the cold milk, they get the flu and die. See, that's what they believe. That's the reasoning behind the things that they think. They believe a lot of old wise tales, a lot of stuff that's been passed along that's not necessarily true, but it's just something that their families or that is passed down from generation to generation. So we've had to work through some of these things and show them a little bit better approach to some of these things, so they can move from just for surviving to where they can actually thrive, and this can be a prosperous thing for them. So with the cows, when we got there, they were producing about 6 liters a day for 3 cows. That's 1.5 gallons. I spent a whole year learning the metric system, and now we get back here and I'm having to convert everything, and it's confusing me. It's hard to learn the metric system for me. And I finally get it, and we come back to the States. So we went from getting 6 liters, so all we did was added water. We had them dewormed. They were very wormy. Their coats were awful. And we just added some milk minerals to their diet is all we did. And we went from getting 6 liters a day in about a month and a half to we were getting 40 liters a day. The same cows. We didn't get new cows. We only had 3, the same cows, from 6 liters to 40 liters. So we went from surviving into thriving. We're now able to use all the milk for the school. The school uses about 10 liters a day. This is an ex-British colony, so of course they still have to have their tea time every morning. So they use 10 liters of milk and tea. So for breakfast they have tea and 4 pieces of loaf bread. So we're able to provide the milk for their tea every morning. And then we sell the other 30 to a guy who rides by on his bicycle and fills up a 20-liter bucket and then rides into town, sells the milk 1 liter at a time as he scoops it out with a little spoon thing. And that's what he does for a living. He comes by, gets our milk, and rides into town and sells it. So just these very simple, basic things we're able to do, just these small education that has made this move from just a project that was barely even covering its cost to a project that's successful and can be successful to a larger scale. We have moved now from this small wooden house that you see, we have a huge concrete house that'll hold 20 cows. We've also fenced in several pasture areas so we can rotate our cows during the rainy season. The goal is to have about 10 cows that we're milking, and then we'll use the other for the babies to raise them and then sell the babies. So we'll be making money off the milk and also money off of the selling the cows. And all this money does not go to me. All this money goes back to the school. We put this money back into the school to cut costs on the budget. That's our main goal. We want to be able to reduce all the money sent to the school so that it can continue to run without anyone sending money. Another thing we do is the gardening. We grow all the vegetables that the school uses. And we use raised bed drip irrigation. We do this for a couple reasons. One, being a weather forecaster over there is very easy. 2 months out of the year you get rain, then you get about a month that's iffy, then you get 3 months out of the year where you get rain, and then the rest of the time, no rain at all. And that's every year. So for 6 months, there's 0% chance of rain. It gets so dry over there, it's terrible. You think Georgia right now is dry, it's bad over there. After about 6 months of no rain, there's huge cracks in the ground, and it's real dusty. I think our first year there, our noses were bleeding, and our sinuses were, it's really, really dry and dusty. So we do the drip because it doesn't waste water. We actually have to have water trucked in on a truck about twice a week during the dry season. And they bring the water, and sometimes it's nasty. Sometimes it looks like they get it out of the creek, or I don't know where they get it sometimes. It's muddy and nasty. And so they have to bring this in. That's what they use for showers. That's what they use to cook with. And we also use it in the garden. So it's expensive during the dry season, so we try to conserve as much water as possible. So we use the drip because it waters a very small area. We use the raised beds because when we do get rain, it rains hard and it rains fast. And there's a lot of flash flooding. I would say the soil there is a mixture between asphalt and concrete. It is very, very, very hard. We've broke tons of handles out there. It's a very rough soil to till. It's very nutritious because of all the ash, but for some reason it's very, very, very hard. We've had to do a lot of composting, a lot of manure to even get the soil to where we can plant below ground crops. Above ground crops do great. The roots break the soil just fine, but anything under the ground like potatoes, carrots, they don't do very well. We did potatoes right when we first got there. And they were beautiful plants. They grew. I thought this is going to be a good crop. And we dug them, and the biggest one I had was about this big because they just couldn't expand under the dirt. The soil was so hard that they wouldn't grow. So we've had to do a lot of composting to get this where we can start planting some underground stuff. So when we arrived, they had 5 beds. We now have 35 beds put in. And so that way we can rotate in order to always keep greens available for the school. We feed about 80 people twice a day. So that's a lot of food. So we have to keep the greens. We have some that we just planted, some that are mature, and some that's in the middle. And we've had to work with them. When we first got there, they had all 5 beds planted at the exact same time, so they're all tall. So after you pick all those, there's no way to have any more until the next one grows in. So we've been working with rotation of crops and doing some things like this to ensure that there's always something available. So each one of these beds takes about a day to put in, so that's 35 days worth of digging in the dirt. Since I was there, I've lost close to 30 pounds. So if any of you are interested in a good weight loss program, you're more than welcome to come over and dig with me sometime. It is very, very tough stuff. We recently got some nice shovels and picks. That's about as sophisticated as we get. It's a lot like your great-grandfather had to farm, minus the mules. For some reason, they don't use donkeys to do any kind of tilling. There are a few tractors, but we don't have one. Well, all we have is shovels. We actually have a guy who's donating a tractor, hopefully within the next month or so. We should have our first tractor on the mission, which is exciting. After a year of breaking my back, I finally get to ride the tractor a little bit. But my wife's done told me that's going to be her job. I still get to dig. So we do have that coming. So we keep the greens going year-round. Because of the temperature, the coldest it gets is in the 60s, and the heat of the summer, it's up around 100, upper 90s, but there's no humidity. I didn't realize how much I did not miss the humidity when we stepped off the plane in Atlanta. It was rough walking out the door. When you're not been in humidity for a year, it just takes your breath away. It's hard to imagine. I like it without humidity a lot better. There's some more pictures of us putting in the thing. But we also, during the short rains and long rains, we grow some larger crops. We farm about 4.5 acres by hand. We plant by hand, till by hand, fertilize by hand, pick the crops by hand, and then shuck the corn by hand. So it's a lot of by hand stuff and backbreaking stuff. This year we harvested 25 250-pound bags of corn. And all that was done by 5 guys and shovels and rakes and our backs and hands. So it's a lot of fun labor out in the farm. You can see there, it's interesting. That's how they carry everything on their head. It's a cool thing. We actually have a lady that comes and buy eggs every day, and she gets She has a 20-liter bucket, and it has about 90 eggs in it. She gets every day, and she just puts it on her head and just walks off with her hands down by her side, just swinging away like it's nothing. I keep telling them that to teach me, but they say I'm American. I can't do that. It's almost an African thing, but one day I'm going to get them to show me how they do it. It's pretty amazing. They just walk. I mean, you can see them with half a car on their head just walking down the road. It's cool. Neil knows. You see some crazy things over there. It's interesting. So this is the farming part. We do all the beans during the short rains and the corn during the long rains. Not only are we doing this for the school to raise the money for the school, we're also taking advantage of the students being there to teach them as well. When most of these students leave, they are going to a church that can't support them. This area is very, very, very poor. A lot of people don't know where the next meal is going to come from, so they can't support a preacher. So we're giving them these skills, giving them this education so that these projects that they could have done to just survive, we're giving them this bonus education where they can take these things to the next level, where they can thrive at doing some of these different farming projects. So we teach them the chickens, we teach them the farming, we teach them about the cows, and encourage them to go back and try some of these things out if you like them and enjoy them, and use this as your way of living. For some of those that are picked up from support from the states, we're encouraging them to put some of this stuff in their church. Use your church land to do a small garden. Use your church land to grow chickens or something. And use that as an outreach to the community. Use that as an outreach to some of your members that are more poor, the widows, the orphans and stuff like that who need help. Use this to help them. And so we've worked hard with the students. I actually just got some videos the other day of the students out there putting in some beds that Augustine sent me. Augustine's still taking the students now that I'm gone and still teaching them about the farming stuff and making them work out there on the farm. So we're doing that. And also, we've also been invited out to a bunch of the churches to put in some gardens for them. We use this opportunity. We go out and the whole church shows up and they take part of this and they help us put in the raised beds, and we go out and buy some of the local greens and plant them for them and bring the buckets. We provide all this for them and put these things in so they can use for their church members or for an outreach. So we've been not only doing this for the school, but we're also trying to do this in the community to give some education to the community so they can learn these things and so they can better themselves in what they're doing. This is the future of the farming project. These are the guys that I work with every day that we want to take over. In 3 years, we want to be able to walk away from this project, not because we want to, but because we need to. We don't want to be there forever running this project. In order for it to be successful, we need to be able to walk away, and these guys need to be able to take over. They need to be able to run this mission, this farm, and to be able to teach other people, the ones that, as this gets bigger, we'll have to add more people. So they need to be able to teach the people coming after me and run this thing for themselves. The guy at the top with the chickens is Roderick. We call him Bwana Kuku. That means Mr. Chicken in Swahili. So that's his name. He's very, very good. He's one of my favorites over there. I don't know if any of you have ever raised any broilers before, but they're very hard to raise. They're the same chickens you see on the back of the chicken trucks here. If you look at them wrong, they drop dead. Last time we raised 600, we lost 5 chickens. This is in a third world country in a block house, and we lost 5 out of 600. That is amazing. He is very, very good. He's so good, he's annoying. If I even get near the chicken house, he's yelling at me. You haven't sprayed. You have bugs on you. He does not let you get anywhere near it until you've took all the precautions and that you need to take. Just sometimes I'm lazy and I forget, but he's not. He's very, very good. He takes pride in this. He comes up all the time and is like, well, none of them died today. He tells me every day how many died. He's proud that he can raise these chickens and not lose them. The guy beating the beans with a stick, I don't know if you can tell that's what he's doing, but when we pull beans out, we pull them out, put them on a tarp, and you take this really big stick and you beat the beans until they fall out of the shells. And so that's how you harvest beans over there. It's fun for about 5 minutes, and then the stick gets really heavy. So I was actually helping him, and then the stick got real heavy. I have a bad shoulder from playing baseball. So I just said, I can't do this. So I said, you do this. I'm going to take a picture. I got to go do some supervising things. And so I left him to swing that stick for the rest of the day. It's a lot of fun for a little while. It gets pretty rough. But that's Richard. He runs our garden. And then the guy doing being baptized up there is actually our cow guy. Because this is a Church of Christ mission, it represents the churches of Christ there in Arusha, in Tanzania. We won't allow Christians to work there. But we had an emergency. The guy that was over our cows had to leave, and we had no one else. And if you can count how many people is up there, that's 4 people plus me. So that's 5 doing all these projects. There's not very many people doing a lot of stuff. And so when one guy leaves, that's a huge blow. So Richard said, well, my brother's not doing anything. He just came to town. Can he come work? And the way it works out, we let him work for a month. And then while we look for someone else to be full-time there. Well, while he was there, the guys you see up there were talking to him, were evangelizing to him. And in about 3 weeks of being there, he decided he wanted to be baptized. He's now a very faithful member at Kisongo there. He comes to church every Sunday and every Thursday. And he's been a great, strong Christian. All because he came to work, and the guys, it's all of them. He speaks 0 English, so it was all of them doing all the evangelizing. The guys I have working for me are very, very, not only good at the farm, but they love God, they care about God, and they evangelize any chance they get. The guy at the top is Augustine. I spend about as much time with him as I do my wife. We're together all the time. He's the guy that I'm training to take over my job. He the next me. We work with him about planning for the future. That's not something they do. If they look, one day ahead, that's a big deal for them. But farming, we have to be planning, a couple weeks ahead, a month ahead, a year ahead. We've had to work a lot with that with him, and also doing some financials, because he'll be the one that's over this whole project. He needs to learn to do some spreadsheets and things and keep up with all the financial stuff. So that's probably my best friend over there is Augustine. We spend a lot of time together. He speaks great English. He translates for me a lot. So we spend a lot of time here. I'm going to check the time real fast. Okay. Now, that's not all we're doing. That has been one of our main focuses is the raising the money for the school. But we do get out and do some other things. On top of our 40, 50-hour a week job, we actually do some other stuff out in the community. We take off one day of the week. I get there early. I help Roderick with the chickens, and me and him head out and do personal evangelism about once a week. He speaks decent English, so it's been kind of fun doing evangelism with him. So sometimes we're arguing back and forth about it. I said, I don't think you said that right. He said, well, what did you say? And so it's a lot of fun doing evangelism with him. But and then my wife does personal evangelism, a couple times a week. I know Neil knows this. Anytime you go, or you know this. Anytime you show up at a church, you have to be ready to preach, because they will be singing the song, and it'll come time for a preacher, and they say, well, now Brother Justin's going to bring us a lesson today. And you're like, well, I'm glad you knew. But, that's the first time you've heard about it. Anytime you're a visitor and you walk into a church building, they think you're going to preach, whether you want to or whether you know about it or not. So you always have to be ready. They take that verse, be ready in season, out of season, way out of context. So you always have to be ready anytime you step in a church building. So I have several lessons I haven't even got to preach yet, because it just happened to be that they didn't ask me that Sunday, or someone else. There's another visitor that they asked. So you always have to be ready to preach. So I got to do a lot of preaching. Actually, my first sermon ever was over there at the leadership conference in front of about 250 people. That was the first time I ever preached, was in Africa. So I've been able to do a lot of preaching, and kind of, as you can tell, I'm still not real comfortable with it, but get to speak and do a little bit. Also, my wife works with the local church here at Kisongo, as she does a lot with the women and does a lot with teaching the children, as far as creating stuff for them to teach with, Bible material and stuff. We kind of have a big, there's some churches that have sent almost 500 pounds worth of material over to us that we have gone through and separated, and now we have been showing some people how to do Bible material for children at the local church there. One of our favorite things that we do is these children's seminars, and this kind of shows the way the school has, that these Christians have been through the school, how mature they are in their Christianity. These people come up to us, it's Jane and Des Derry, they came up to us when we got there and said, we have noticed a problem in our local community that they were not teaching their children in Bible classes. They weren't having Bible classes for children. And if they were just open the Bible to they would just whatever they picked up to and opened up to Job, and they would just read the story of Job word for word through the whole book. And that's how they were teaching Bible class. So they said, we need to go out and teach these women how to teach Bible classes so they can have classes for these children. So this quickly became one of our favorite months favorite days of the month. We got to travel to some pretty hairy places way out in the middle of nowhere, and got to see some beautiful parts of Africa. One of our favorite places we've been, we actually drove out down this dirt road. It started raining. It turned into a mud road. And we got stuck. We had to get out and walk, and we actually had to climb a waterfall on top of this hill to get to the church building. It was 4 sticks with a tarp over it is all it was. And there was about 15 members that met there on top of this hill. It was pretty awesome. You have to be pretty adventurous sometimes, so it was a lot of fun. And so we got to see some beautiful parts of Africa doing this. But we've also got to get in some of these remote villages, some of these remote churches that hadn't had help in a long time. So what we do with these children's seminars is, at the very beginning, my wife and Jane teach the children, but with the goal of the women to be in there watching them teach the children so they can see how to teach children. And they teach about the Bible. They teach about God is the 2 lessons they do. The Bible and then creation are 2 lessons they do. And then we have lunch. Just like all churches of Christ here and in Africa, anytime you get together, you want to have lunch. You want to have a big potluck or something. So they're just like y'all, just like every other church. When you get together in a big group, you have some sort of meal. So we have this meal. But this meal is important because it brings in a lot of people. We've been to these places that had as little as 5 to 10 members, and we've had as many as 150 kids show up because they know there's food. And these kids then bring their parents. As kind of a bonus, we've been able to actually study with, I think one place we went, we had a group of almost 55 people that we were able to study with at one time. All because they knew there was food, and they brought their kids, and we took advantage of that. And we sat down, and me and Des Derry, or if anyone else that is with us, we'll sit down and hold a big Bible study before lunch, and after lunch we'll take them and do some individual Bible studies with those that are still interested. And so we've been able to baptize a lot of people out in these rural, small villages with the churches that need a lot of help. And we've been able to strengthen some of these churches by being there and encouraging the members and then baptizing new members into Christ. And then after lunch, my wife and Jane take the women out. We try to run off the children. Most of the time that doesn't work, so we end up having to go play with them in one direction, and then they take the women in another direction. And they work with the women, teaching them the importance of teaching children. There's actually a resource room in Arusha that has a bunch of material that people have donated. These women can come and get material. They'll make material for them to teach class for like a month or 2 at a time. But they don't come get these things because they're scared of them. A lot of these women have never seen a crayon. When you give a kid a crayon, they just look at it. They have no idea what to do with a crayon. And when you touch it to the paper and they see that it marks, they're amazed. It's crazy to think that they don't even understand how a crayon works. If you pull out a felt board, they think it's some kind of movie on like a big screen TV. Like PowerPoint is crazy. All you need is a felt board over there. And they just go nuts. It's something they've never seen. So these very simple things that we haven't used in a long, long time are new to them. And they don't understand them, so the women don't use them, and the kids don't get to see them because they're scared of them. So we bring all that material with us. And then my wife teaches them, hey, this is a crayon. You mark it on a color sheet. This is the felt board. You can teach stories. And she shows them the importance of using visual aids, the importance of teaching children on their own level so that they will be interested and so that they can learn. So just like with the school, just like with the farm, also with this program, we're not just going out doing these things. We're teaching these women to be able to do this once we leave. That's the goal, is to not only just go out and do, but to teach people to do so that you don't have to be there the whole time. See, if we just went out and taught the children, then that would be one lesson, and then most of the time that would be it. So we like to spend time teaching the women how to teach the children so that when we leave, this can continue. So these children can continue to get lessons, that they can continue to be interested in the Bible and to grow in their knowledge of the Bible because they can understand what they're learning. Here we go. I'm doing good tonight. Not been speaking for an hour. Since we've been there, one of the perks of being in Africa is you get to see a lot of cool animals. there's actually a church, Mosquito River, that we've been to several times. When you're driving, we've actually had to stop for zebras. We had to stop for wildebeest. One day we had to stop while these giraffes crossed the road. You don't get to do that much here. So it's pretty neat when you're driving, all these crazy looking animals are running out in front of you and you have to be careful. We live not very far from wildlife. We live close to Arusha, but you head about an hour the other way and you're seeing animals already out in the fields, depending on what type of the migration. One of my favorites is the zebras. They're gorgeous animals. Before I went there, I would have said I wouldn't like the zebras. They look like donkeys. Well, they do. But the stripes and the colors on them are cool, and they make this really cool sound. They're always kicking and flipping. There's fun animals to watch. Now, when you get to see these animals, there's thousands of them out there. There's a bunch. As far as you can see, there'll be zebras and wildebeest and just running around playing and stuff. So they're really cool animals. One thing about these animals that I like is that no matter how many zebras you see, they're all different. No zebra is alike, much like our fingerprints. All zebras are unique to themselves. So you will never see two zebras that have the same stripe pattern. Even though you see hundreds and thousands of them out there, they're all different. That's kind of like us. God made us, but He made all of us different. He made us all with different skills. He made us all with different talents. But He made us all for the same purpose. See, God made all of us for the same reason. One of my favorite verses, Ephesians 2:10. For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. See, we're all different. We all have different talents. We all have different life skills. We all have different things that we've been through that change who we are. But we were all made for the same reason. We were all made for the same purpose. And that purpose was to serve God. And the only way that we can truly be happy, the only way that we can truly be satisfied with our lives is to be serving God. A lot of times we look for satisfaction in money. We look for satisfaction in fame, but that always leaves us wanting more and more and more. It's not until we do what we're made to do. It's not until we're fulfilling what our Creator intended for us, and that's to serve Him in what we do. So tonight, maybe you've slipped off the path. Maybe you have forgot your first love, and you're not doing what you were created to do anymore. You're not following God. You're not serving God. Tonight, if you need to come forward to the church to pray for you, we're willing to do that. Well, maybe you haven't started your walk with Christ. Maybe you've not been baptized into Christ, and you need to do that tonight. If there's anything the church can do for you, if you would, come as we stand and sing.